chatty.
Perfect. So, hi, Gail. Good to see you.
Hey, good to see you too.
Thanks. So, Gail, I thought we could start a little bit. We'll be talking about emotionally focused family therapy, today. And I'll, as I introduce you, I'll let everybody know that, I'm happy and privileged to call you a friend and a mentor. I'm grateful for that. And
Wow.
learning alongside you. Thanks. And Gail, give me a little sense. I know you're a social worker and a registered marriage and family therapist in Ottawa.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe just sort of fill in some bio for us.
Okay, sure. Well, I always talk about my good fortune in life, right? And
Yeah.
in 1987, right, which is 34 years ago now.
Oh my gosh.
I just happened to be at the right place at the right time. I was a social worker working on an outpatient psychiatric clinic, and we had a family therapy team there. And guess who came to lead the family therapy team?
I can only imagine.
Dr. Johnson.
Sue Johnson was there to lead the family therapy team.
Right. So, that's when I first met her and have been alongside her since that time. And it's just been obviously transformational for me, just in terms of seeing her in action. I always say, well, now we're going to hit a lull, right? We've done all of this and now we'll just kind of coast. Well, that doesn't happen with Sue, right? She's always moving and growing the model, including just recently, right? For attachment theory and practice, where we're really
EFFT, right? Which isn't new overall, but with the focus there. Yeah.
One model, three modalities, which is, I think so incredible to think about. We have a way to encounter our clients that is effective, whether we have one person, a couple, or a whole family sitting in front of us. So I just think it's such a gift to all the clinicians out there, what she's actually given to the field.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a really cool way to say that, and all those things wrapped around that really strong attachment theory grounding. And I think so often for people, some of the time there's like a grasping around, sort of wondering where to ground their practice theoretically. And one of the comforts I've found in working with our model is just feeling grounded, like theoretically being able to draw on knowing where I want to head in general, even if I'm not positive about where to go in a given moment, but just sort of knowing what I'm up to and having a solid sense of what creates distress and how to get out of distress, where it comes from, how it's caused, and right.
Yeah. And we don't need, 1,000 different treatment manuals. We have this therapeutic stance that helps us understand, right? And not only conceptualize what's happening, but move in a way that creates lasting change. That's, I think, mind-blowing when you think about it, that we can, offer that to our clients who are obviously struggling and suffering.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and what's so interesting to me is that you were in the field and underway before you had this grounding. I mean, you may have had an attachment theory grounding, but you didn't have the model. You didn't know Sue.
No.
Or just prior to knowing Sue. And so maybe you and I spend a few minutes talking about some of the changes that you've seen or where you were prior and what it's meant.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, this is going to age me, Con. Okay. So you're asking a lot of me right now.
All right. Well, we'll just, you're in safe company.
Okay.
Right.
I was working for about 10 years before I met Sue.
Wow. Well, good for you. I sincerely wouldn't have thought. So that's into the 70s. Yeah.
Yeah, the 70s. So I was around when family therapy was, born, and the family
Yeah.
therapy pioneers. When you think about Jay Haley and Virginia Satir and Mnuchin, I mean, those were the folks that I studied. And certainly the way I began was to think about family as a system, right? And I think that systemic thinking really did, revolutionize psychotherapy when we started to look at what's happening between people.
Yeah.
But the way I intervened was, based on things like power. And when I would get stuck with the family, I found myself grasping for interventions like, a paradox that, would confuse families, telling parents, to go home and practice the symptom more. They would, look at me like, what's wrong? What's wrong with you? You're not with us. You're not tuning into us. You're not getting that we're in distress here. And I think we did those kinds of things because we didn't know how to affect change. We knew how to understand what was happening, but we didn't know how to move the system towards change. So I think that what, Sue brought for me personally, and I think to the field, was the attachment perspective, right? When you think about what's happening between people as being governed by the attachment bonds, that exist between them, then you understand how the system is organized, right? What's the controlling element here? It's attachment. That's what motivates people. Right?
Oh, absolutely. Yep. Yeah. Throughout.
Throughout.
Well, we don't survive. And I mean, it's kind of an evident point, but I think we don't think of it some of the time, but there's no survival without it. There's no ability to reach and feel like someone's going to care for you from infancy. It's just essential to survival.
Exactly.
And then that never goes away, right? Those longings to, feel secure, to feel safe, don't go away. And then, as we know, there's such distress when we can't when we can't feel secure, just being ourselves, making a reach, it brings up so much distress. Start to see, see people act out of that distress.
Exactly. Yeah.
And great difficulty connecting.
Right. So when you have those glasses on, right, we can make meaning out of that distress rather than label people as, sick or, defective in some way, that their strategies make sense when you think about it from an attachment perspective.
Absolutely.
Right? If I can't reach you and you are the most important person to me, right, I'm going to either get bigger or louder or completely shut down.
Absolutely. Yeah, just take care of myself and move away from it. Push down on the need to reach you. Just, don't sit in the distress of it. I was thinking too a moment ago when you talked about some of that early work, pre-attachment, and how families would feel not seen, not heard, understood. And I just thought, what a contrast, right, to what we're doing right now, how the amount of time we spend reflecting, validating, joining, really feeling into what's happening for the people in front of us, for all the family members, for members of a couple, whoever we have in front of us. Just so much spent on that, on letting them know that we're with them. And what a difference that is. It must have been.
Yeah, we're not doing anything to people, right? Walking alongside them.
Yeah.
Right. We're evoking what's within them. And when you think about parents and children, that inherent, need to caretake, right, is in there, right? It's not something that we're trying to, invent or develop, right? We're trying to turn on those attachment longings that are, like you said, just part of survival. Those, yeah.
Let's talk for a moment, and I'm going to hold the idea of the caretaking intent. You said that caretaking that's in there. I want to hold that because I know that's so central,
right,
to what we're up to, having that turned on and having that evident to people and getting blocks out of the way for that. And we can drop back in on that, but talk for a moment about how EFFT, emotionally focused family therapy, sessions are structured, or how the work is structured. So you meet a family, and how do you start to make decisions about, do you have everybody there all the time, or let people in a little bit on the structure?
Well, certainly we have a roadmap, right, that's set out in stages of change, and also steps that we see the family go through, which gives us a treatment map, basically, of how we might forecast the treatment unfolding over time. Every single session also is governed by certain moves that the therapist is making, right, which Sue calls the EFT Tango. So we do have not only an overall arcing view of the treatment, we also know how we're going to interact with the family by going through these 5 moves of the tango, which are interventions that we make, that basically are helping family members create new conversations, right? New interactions, new communications that start to shift the bond towards security and safety. So that's generally how each session will unfold, and how we structure the sessions, right, is based on what we call a decision tree. And we have certain factors that we think about, right? Certainly we have an assessment process that we go through, and then, making decisions of who do we see in the room when, really depends on the family and their needs, right? Which I think really also points to the shift in family therapy. When I first started doing family therapy in the 70s, you didn't see a family unless everyone was present, right? And never worked with parts of families. Whereas I think at this, here we are in the, 2021, we want to tailor our sessions to meet our family's needs. Isn't that a unique concept?
Yeah.
It's kind of like we tune into our parents, we walk alongside our kids, right? We have a different kind of relationship, and we also structure our sessions based on what this family is needing from us and how we can be most effective with them.
It sounds so obvious. It's like, duh, as you say it, right? Of course we'd be doing that, but we haven't always been doing that, and with the EFFT, we have not just a way to do that, but we have a way to decide how to do that, how to, who we're going to see when. So some of the time you'll be working with, varied dyads, just maybe even alone in session. So you might have mom and daughter for a meeting. You might be focused with mom and daughter then, with everybody else present.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So that, that's a really important factor there, Con, and it's because attachment is dyadic, right? I have a bond, right, with one person. We work dyadically, whether we have 2 people, 3 people, 5 people in the room. And ideally, when you think about a family system, to be able to shift the most distressed dyad in the presence of other family members is the ideal, right? Because they get to witness, they get to be impacted by the change in that relationship. And, when you think systemically, when that dyad becomes less distressed, there's more room for other family members, right?
Yep.
To maybe come forward and say, hey, what about me? Right. I've got needs too. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And so then you'd, excuse me, Gail. So you had mentioned tango moves, those kind of 5, fundamental intervention moves. And, some people will be familiar with those if they've done EFT couple work, or any kind of EFT work, if they've done some family or individual. They're working dyadically. But you might then have, an intervention going. Let's say I'm using that mom and daughter example again, everybody's seeing it. And so then what they're going to see, could you just briefly describe those 5 moves? Because they're so central to what we're up to. And, part of why I like to talk about them, they let us know where to go. We always have a way to operate. We always know what we're up to as we move.
Right.
To me, has been the beauty of all the EFT interventions.
Yes.
That there's always a clear path and a map of what we're up to, and
Exactly.
a method of doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and what we're following is the emotion. So, we have a map, we have moves that we make, and we're following the music of the emotion. So, because emotion is the music of attachment, right? It's not a cognitive, it's not something that we do in our heads. We feel deeply, right, and completely when we're attached to a family member or a romantic partner. So if we're looking at that mother-daughter dyad, if I'm the therapist, I might notice some emotional reaction coming from one of them, right? And that's where I would start. I would reflect that, right? And that's the first move of the tango, is to reflect. Present in a present moment. What I see is what we might call it like an emotional handle. Mom might say something very critical, and I might say, "Oh, what's happening right there? I see you correcting your daughter. Can we explore that a little bit?" Right? So when you reflect something, you're slowing the process down so that you can move in and start to assemble what Sue calls assembling their emotional experience.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is really going into that mother's internal emotional world, right?
Right.
Can I ask you, when you say that, right? I hear the tension in your voice, right? I hear something else happening for you. Can we talk about that? I'm wondering what it is that's happening on the inside for you. And the mother might say, well, I'm really frustrated, or, when she doesn't listen, that frustrates me. I think the beauty of working with family is we can always validate, right? Through using the attachment. Of course, you're frustrated. You want to reach your daughter when you can't reach her, right? And you're her mother, right? And you want to help her. Of course, that's frustrating. Right. So we want to kind of unpack the mother's emotional experience so that she can get to the place of perhaps saying, I get scared, right? When I can't.
Oh, okay, right. So at that point, you're underneath what's showing up in the room.
Right.
You've grabbed it in present time. You've moved further into emotional experience, like you're talking about, and like you said, what Sue calls affect assembly, right? Or you're understanding what's all the components and what's happening behind this aggravation that's showing up, or frustration, or mom becoming critical or seeming overbearing to daughter. You're sort of talking at that and getting what's beneath it. And I'm struck as you describe that, how I remember starting out, before I was familiar with the model or anything, how to some extent I wanted to keep emotion a little bit out there and didn't want it to show up too much, or even really entertain it too much in the room.
Exactly.
Because then what the hell am I going to do with it, right? If it starts to get big or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And especially when it's, reactive, and what we might consider negative emotion that actually pushes people away. We want to calm things down, right? Rather than go into the experience. And certainly early family therapy was all about that. Stay away from the emotion. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're actually going into the emotional experience because that's what creates the change.
Okay. Okay.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So you've gone into the emotional experience and you're going to move it now to a place where the change starts. And that would be your third move in this series of 5 tango moves, we're calling them.
Right.
There's a history to that we could talk about before we wrap up, but
yeah. So that third move is a new conversation, right? So asking the mother to share with her daughter something like, when I get critical of you, I'm actually afraid. Right? I'm actually scared, or it might be when I'm really frustrated with you. Underneath that, I really feel I'm afraid of what's going to happen to you. Right. So the daughter is experiencing the mother in a new kind of way. And the mother is becoming more aware of her own, reactivity, and she's getting to a softer place inside. Right.
Okay. Yeah. So we're literally asking, Mom, can you turn to her and let her know this? And can you hear your mom talk about this a little bit about what happens there, right? So it's an encounter. They're connected with each other and we're setting it up so that they're really engaged with one another as this happens. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And then the fourth move is to actually process that, right? What was it like, Mom, to say that? Right? Say I wasn't even, aware that I was afraid, or she might justify her fear. Of course I'm afraid. Right? But we want to ask her more specifically, what's it like to share that with your daughter? And also for the daughter to receive it. Certainly early on in the work, the daughter would say something like, I don't believe it, or it doesn't sound like fear to me, or I don't care. Yeah, and we would expect that because the daughter has lots of reasons not to trust, and has her own fears related to, maybe not being seen or accepted or cared for previously. So, yeah.
I remember one of the big epiphanies for me in learning the model was moving off of that idea of resistance, right? Because this might be framed as some resistance we have to work with or whatever. And it's not that at all. It's just that it's hard to imagine that that's really the case, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's part of the experience, of course. And we would validate, of course, right? That's hard to believe. Yeah.
You're not in touch with these parts that have this softer, open space for you to approach or whatever. The thing you're experiencing or seeing is it's hard for you. It's hard for you to imagine that that's there.
Yeah.
When there's so much anger on top up top of it, or so much frustration, it's just so hard to imagine there's more to it.
Yeah. I think there's such, we talk about 5 moves, but there's such richness and so many layers to these interventions that we're making that, like you said, when we get something that we might sort of used to call resistance, it's actually new information, right? It's something that we want to know about, right? Because it actually moves the process along a bit more, right?
Right. Yes. So this has happened. We're through, we've set this up where there's this encounter between the two. We've processed that encounter, like you say, in this move. And then there's another piece to it. There's a fifth move, and just talk about that for a moment.
Yeah. So the 5th move is really just summarizing. The therapist summarizes that new conversation, and oftentimes we'll contrast it between how mom and daughter might have, got stuck previously. This is new, this is different. Look what just happened here. And we're really repeating the experience so that it gets consolidated and integrated, right?
Okay.
So that the mom realizes what's new and changed. The daughter, gets to hear it again. And both of them are starting to see that there might be sort of new shifts in the way they can be with one another. And that's what we're helping them do in session over and over and over again, right? Until it's like, new muscle memory. It's like, oh, this is how we are, mom and daughter together, right?
Yeah. They have a real concrete sense of it, and they can describe it and talk about it ultimately.
Yeah, and they see their relationship in a new way.
Yeah. Certainly more hopeful about what's possible, when they make contact that way. So we're instilling some hope, which is a cool thing. And I think too, it's been my experience at least that this builds in a bridging between sessions. So the work has like a continuous methodologic feel. I'm not just meeting with them, and we are catching what's going on that day in the room, and it might be different than last time. But there's a continuity to things. So I, as therapist, have a sense that next time,
right,
I want to kind of grab here or see how that felt to them between meetings. Have they talked about it or seen it pop up more, or right? And what's what's
it's not like we start at ground zero every session,
right?
It's a process, and because we have this map, we know where we are, right, because we can refer it to it and we go, oh, okay, we're still in stage 1, we're working on a step 3, and this time I want to kind of check in, see where they are, and maybe I need to shift more to the daughter this time, right? So we always have that map to refer to that keeps that process moving along, which I think is the beauty of all of this, right? It's
absolutely
we're empowering the family to get their emotional balance back in place so that they can face their problems or their challenges of life together. That's
absolutely what we're I love the way you describe that. That's just great. The therapist, moving through the process, we're aware of sort of 3 stages of what we're trying to accomplish, right? Talking about the continuity of the work. We're not describing those necessarily to the client. But part of our map is we know those, and then we have a whole bunch of different interventions that people who get trained in emotionally focused therapy, emotionally focused family therapy, become aware of and get practice in utilizing these discrete interventions, not just the tango moves. A whole series of ways of being and making this stuff come alive, which is just great. Could you just really sort of briefly talk about these sort of 3, change event stages and what we're looking for?
Right. So in family therapy, it's the change events are unique because we're working with a parent-child relationship. So the first, change event in stage 1 that we're looking for is parental accessibility and availability to child.
Okay.
Because oftentimes parents come to family therapy in an effort to help their child. So it's kind of saying to the therapist, please fix my child or solve their problems or come to their aid, rather than, oh, I am looking at myself being different with my child. I need to learn how to listen, or I need to learn how to keep my balance. I'm seeing that we're stuck in certain patterns, right, of communication. So when the parent is at that place that they're seeing patterns as being the problem, patterns of communication rather than the child being a problem, that's a marker for the end of stage 1, because you've got the parent now accessible and open and wanting to do things differently with their child.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And for therapists that are hearing this, that are new, haven't yet been to a training, when we think of stage 1, what are you calling stage 1? The name of that actual stage of work?
Yeah, it's called cycle de-escalation or stabilization.
Stabilization or de-escalation. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a marker of the stage 1 work.
Right.
Parental accessibility is enhanced, or unblocked is what I'm hearing you describe.
Yeah, exactly.
Remove blocks. And then moving into stage 2, part of the
Then
work, Gail.
Yeah, stage 2 is really then shifting to the child and helping the child open up and work through their mistrust. Oftentimes there's mistrust. The older the child, the deeper that might be. So that when the child is unblocked, they're more open, they're more vulnerable, and they can express what they need more directly and more clearly. Oftentimes kids, attachment needs show up in behavior. And, there's their message in terms of how they need their parent is pretty scrambled. If not, not even there anymore. Kids will often say, I don't, it's too late. I go to my friends. I don't bother going. I don't go to you anymore as parent. So being able to help work that through for the child so that what they're needing attachment wise is clear and communicated. So needing acceptance, love, understanding, support, comfort, reassurance. Those are the kinds of things that kids would be asking for, to be seen, to be accepted. And that in stage 2, the parent responds effectively to that need. Right?
Okay.
They're responsive, right? They're able to hear the child's vulnerability, stay present to that.
Yeah.
And respond to the child's need.
Okay.
I do love you. I do accept you just for who you are.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is so poignant about it's just poignant on face value, but with what I'm dealing with in the community, or trying to be helpful with in the community, and what we see around us, are so many kids that haven't been able to make that reach and talk. And then where do you go? 7, 8, 9 years old. And of course, we're seeing it not just locally, nationally, internationally, with some of these, just tragic events. And it's not that all of them could have been prevented, but you just wonder some of the time with some of these, or with some substance abuse issues, what might have been different if the parent felt more accessible to the kid, and the kid was able to make reaches in times of stress. First of all, just with the kid's psychology, their own psychology, just secondary to feeling somebody present and feeling secure in that bond. How sort of fortifying that is against substance use, misuse behaviors and things.
Right.
Or other kinds of acting out. Yeah, I'm sorry, Gail.
Well, I think that's so, and what it makes me think about is stage 3, that, in stage 3, once you've resourced the family, the child that does now have a substance abuse issue, right, now has parents that are standing beside that, and they're able then to face their addiction or, their misuse of the substance, right? Because they've got the support of a secure family base.
Yeah.
So I think that is, it's like at the end of therapy, we're facing the problems that might have been what brought the family to family therapy in the beginning.
Okay, that's huge. I mean,
That's
think
huge.
of it that, It is huge. And to think of it that way, that rather than diving in and trying to structure some behavioral intervention or something around the
Right.
problem, I mean, certainly we'd want to, reduce harm, to
Yeah.
assess and reduce harm, right?
Yeah.
But once that's accounted for, then we're kind of clearing the path so that people all feel available to one another and supportive of one another in addressing these issues.
Right.
And each is seeing the way that they might get in the way of facilitating that. They're seeing the way they themselves get in the way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Watching your child, struggle, parents end up reacting, and the way they react actually pushes the child away and makes the ability to solve the problem, even harder. Right. So,
Right.
yeah, so it is really resourcing the family, to face whatever challenges that they're facing. So we're not saying there's a causal, link. I mean, between insecure attachment and whatever the child is presenting.
Right.
Right. We're not saying, oh, because there's insecure attachment, therefore you have an eating disorder. No.
Right.
What we're saying is we can face that problem a whole lot easier if there is that strong bond between you.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
It makes a ton of sense. Yeah, it's a great way to put it. Really great way to put it. So when you start to contrast some of the different models that are out there now,
yeah,
it sounds like a primary point of contrast is that we have this, you pointed to this real critical event where we're setting up this interaction between people so that it's experiential. So it's not some kind of instructional thing. I'm not walking off saying, Gail, just keep in mind you have to say 5 nice things to your daughter this week, or when she says this, you got to put your phone down and chat with her. You guys have had the experience with me.
Right.
I'll let you see something.
Yeah. So that's right on, Con, that we're not really coaching or teaching parents. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But the way we think about it is, you can have those skills in place, and when you lose your emotional balance, those skills go out the window.
Oh yeah.
Right. So what we want to know is what happens when you lose your emotional balance. Right. And we want to come alongside the parent at those moments in real time, help them regain their balance, and then be able to be available to their child in a different kind of way. So rather than kind of going around the parental block, we want to go into it and work it through with us there as a resource, right?
Okay. Yes. Yeah, it makes so much sense. And
I think,
no,
yeah, I think that distinguishes our family therapy approach from other attachment-based family therapy approaches.
Okay.
Yeah.
It just it made so much sense to me when you described how in the moment, if something gets activated, I mean, I know personally, just instructions aren't going to be that helpful, right? If I'm experiencing if I'm experiencing something that gets some intense sense of abandonment, you don't matter, you're not important to me, kind of thing going, I'm going to be relatively quick to reactive before I can, employ some set of calming skills or something. I might then be able to slow down, but it's going to
it's kind of like what Dan Siegel says, right? Connect before correct. But the ability to connect might be nowhere available when I'm in free fall as a parent, right? So we want to be there in the moment of the free fall. And put the feet, the ground underneath the feet of the parent. Give them that experience of being, seen and heard and effectively responded to, so that they can do the same with their own child.
Gotcha. Okay. You know, one of the exciting things for me, and other people might be able to imagine this too, is I've just seen how often family therapy is indicated, where I might not have thought of it before, but understanding it this way now, I see
Right.
that. So I may be working with a couple or individual, and it just becomes evident. Well, we know, so often things are dyadic, or relationship, or the inability to have relationship is at the root of
Right.
distress. But so often family therapies indicated. And had you noticed something similar in the evolution of your work?
Oh, yes. And I think that certainly when I started family therapy, people were really excited about it, right? Because it was a revolution at that time. But I think it fell away, and couple therapy and individual therapy was sort of the go-to place that, therapists went, because we got stuck in family therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And Carol Anderson talks about the Family Therapy Hall of Shame. A lot of parents felt blamed.
Oh,
Parents felt blamed.
gotcha.
Yeah. So we needed to, do a rethink on the whole, how are we going to work in a way that actually empowers parents, right? And keeps them feeling capable and competent. And, because that's who the kids need, is their parents.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so that, I think that was one piece that we, as much as family therapy may have been warranted, we weren't sure what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there was the thinking that if you really help the couple, you help the family. And that's partially true, but may not be fully true, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And knowing how, because a lot of couples will do, say, EFT, and then they'll say, but what about our kids?
Right.
Right. We're still struggling with the kids.
Right.
So they're often more open to intervention at that time. So the therapist knowing that you can actually use all the moves that we know, all the interventions that we know as EFT therapists with the family,
Mm-hmm.
I think is the exciting piece. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That really is. And too, and we won't go in the weeds in this, but one of the things that I start thinking as you describe this is, and I know you and I both have personal lived experience with this, but it's being part of a step family.
Right.
So, people may do a really powerful chunk of couples work, but I think last year it was about the third most common reason I got a call placed to the office as far as couples work went. And even individuals, and it had to do with difficulty being part of in a step family.
Yes. Yeah. No, there are unique challenges, right?
So lumpy, not blended, as you say, for the blended families.
Yeah, lumpy, not blended. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, there are unique challenges, and there are going to be training opportunities coming up there as well, right? So people that have done some basic training in emotionally focused family therapy, where you're saying, and I know this is the case, people should know that the skills are transferable from modality to modality.
Exactly.
So if someone attended a 4-day externship right now in emotionally focused therapy, it's not exclusive just to couples work.
Right.
It's right. So then after getting more grounded in emotionally focused family therapy work, there can be some additional training focuses moving into really, discrete things about blended family, step family.
Right. Yeah, I'm really excited about that. And I know you and I have talked about that too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be having some offerings of those coming up in the next little while.
Yeah, that's cool to look out for. So Gail, where do folks go to start to get more info and learn more?
Well, on the ISEFT website under events, there are EFFT events, training events listed.
Okay.
On the ISEFT website. That's probably really the go-to place for events. There is a training tape on the EFFT.org site,
Okay.
and also a reference list of articles, and I can see the book in your background there, the text.
Yes,
Yeah.
you can. Well worn and dog-eared and all the rest. Yeah.
Very good. Yeah.
So that was 2019, and I would mention to folks that are with us that Gail's one of the authors of the 2019, right? Not 20.
Yeah, 2019. Yeah.
I always lose a year in between because of the COVID events and everything, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So a recent publication, if people want to dig in, I think the book, the studies, watching video, all of it is wonderful. Nothing quite like getting to an in-person training if possible, or an online training where you're getting to interface with people and, be immersed in the training event. It's just so powerful.
Yes, yeah, that's the ideal. And it's just, yeah, it's really my passion to teach family, given that that's where I began so many years ago. And here I am still, yeah, excited about doing the work. So that's got to say something, right?
It says a bunch. Yeah, I think that's so cool. And it was just so great to chat. I appreciate it a lot. It's, you know that our local Reno Tahoe community for emotionally focused therapy is gaining momentum and growing. So this will be a useful resource too for me to share with people in our local therapist community. We have so much need here, and we have so many talented therapists that sort of wonder how to get started and where to head. So this will help them consider, where they're at in their family therapy work, and maybe some questions to ask and where to look.
That's great. Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to chat, Con. It's always a pleasure.
Mine.
Always a pleasure. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Gail.
Okay. Take care.
You do the same.